sponsors' views are well known on many of these subjects, but this is an educational forum, and those are the conditions under which I agree to participate, in which all the candidates must be invited. I write the questions. No one has seen the questions except for me. The sponsors did submit their ideas, and of course, it's pretty clear what their questions would be anyway. It's hardly a big secret. So, with that, we're going to get started with our format this evening. We're going to have opening statements from each of the candidates, and they've drawn to go in order. We'll do closing statements in reverse order, and I will ask each of them, these questions as we go through. And if you have cards that you want to send forward, feel free to sort of wave them in the air, and the folks at the sponsors will bring them up. And as I anticipated, most of the questions I've been asked are already on my list, and because it's pretty clear, what we all want to hear from the candidates today. So we're going to begin with opening statements from Candace Anderson.
Good evening, everybody. And I can move this just a little bit closer to me so you can actually hear me. Experience matters. For the past 21 years, I have had the privilege of serving on 2 different city councils and over 30 commissions, boards, both public and nonprofit. You don't have to just take my word for my stand on environmental issues, the promises you so often hear from politicians. You just have to look at the record. What have I done? My background is I have a degree in public policy. I'm also an attorney licensed to practice law in both Hawaii and in California. I began my career as a prosecuting attorney in Hawaii, practiced law for a short time in California, but put my legal career on hold to serve the community and to raise my family. I am now in my 9th year on the Danville Town Council, and I have established my leadership in issues related to the environment. The first has been the position I have consistently taken in opposing the county allowing building in the Tassajara Valley. I've worked hard as Danville has created its own climate action plan to look throughout the county to find the best practices that we need in our community. I've been working on protecting all along Danville's open space by tightening our hillside ordinance that restricts growth at the tops of our hillsides, and also as new development comes in to ensure that we're able to maximize as much permanent open space for the benefit of our community as well. I work closely with our Sustainable Danville organization, with our environmental clubs, who have come up with some great ideas of how we can create a more sustainable community in Danville. Working on creating new jobs with the iGate initiative. These are green, clean technology, partnering with the labs. Working on getting people out of cars. I do this serving on the County Connection Board of Directors through our Traffics program with school buses transporting children. Street Smarts, where we have plans to get children riding, walking to school rather than in cars. Working on systems of bike trails, walking trails throughout our community. Serving on the Board of Directors of the Central Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority, where we have amazing programs that have lowered the diversion rate for the entire county. And most importantly, leading by example. I keep my reusable bags in the back of my car. I recycle. I encourage my community to do the same. As the only candidate who has this breadth of experience, I'm going to bring the same public policy I've established in Danville to the county.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sean White.
Thank you very much. My name is Sean White, and I am for the Greenbelt. I think that's what this whole thing is about. Let me just go back to the year 2000 when I first ran for this position, and I didn't do so well, but I did get some issues out there that I was very passionate about. I was raised in the Greenbelt. I'm from the Greenbelt, over in Canyon. I don't know if you know where Canyon is. Some of you probably do. And so I'm what they call a Canyon critter over there. I grew up there. Spent half my life there in Canyon. My great-grandfather and his father, they all lived there, so I'm a 5th-generation Greenbelt resident. In fact, some of my DNA comes from the Alameda whip snake, and the other part of it comes from the red-legged frog. So what happened in those years is I saw Gateway Valley encroaching upon the property that I was raised on, and they were looking at buying our cousin's land. And so I went up and I raised a lot of heck and did what I could do to put a stop to that. And one of those things included running for this position. And I didn't win, but I got some issues out there. And right now, I'm running a different kind of a campaign. So my main issue this campaign is not going to be, the green belt. It's pretty obvious where I come from. But my main issue is what's going to help save the green belt. Is what's going to help bring our economy back. What's happening right now in this country and in this county and everywhere else is politicians are getting a lot of money from special interests. And when you raise this kind of money, you can't say that you're going to be impartial. And so if somebody's getting money from developers, and what's that going to do for the green belt, And I think there should be an even playing field. I think that I challenge everyone that's running for any position, not just these nice ladies next to me, to throw away, to give all the money back. What would that do for our election? I know it's hard to do because you're running against other people. I know Barack Obama's not going to do it. In fact, I gave him a few bucks myself. But I think it's time to make a change. That change isn't going to happen on the national level. It's going to start locally. So one of the things that green people like to say is think globally, act locally, and that's what I'm doing with campaign finances. And in this election also, you're not throwing away your vote if you vote for anybody, because in this election, if nobody gets 50%, there's going to be a runoff. So that's the way it's going to be. Thanks very much. Vote for me.
And Tommy Vanderbroek.
Good evening. I would like to thank the Greenbelt Alliance, Save Mount Diablo, Sierra Club, League of Conservation Voters, Native Plant Society, and Lisa for moderating and for hosting this event tonight. Thank you. During my brief opening statement, I'm going to talk briefly about my background, qualifications, my priorities for serving as your supervisor. I was born and raised here in Contra Costa County. I grew up riding horses, probably in the same Moraga and Orinda Hills that Sean was talking about, that are now covered with homes. I attended the local public schools, and my first job here was a Contra Costa Times paper girl. I worked straight through the last 35 years to help pay for my college, to build my career, and to support my family. I have two sons, one at Oregon State University and one a sophomore at Marimani High School in Orinda. I've told my husband that I never wish to live out of the view of Mount Diablo again. I'm an active businesswoman in the community volunteer, and I bring 20 years of business experience to this race. I also worked for the District 3 supervisor shortly as chief of staff, which gave me an excellent view into the county and its operations. I staffed it for 3 years, read the packets, and sat before them as they went about their business. I understand what they're doing at the county level. I started and ran my own business. I grew it into a 3-partner communications firm. I served as the managing partner, and as such, I was the one responsible for the budget, cash flow, and making payroll. For the last 7 years, I've served on the Contra Costa Community College District Governing Board. I currently serve as its president. We oversee a $160 million budget and set policies that guide the operations and learning at Diablo Valley, Contra Costa, and Los Medanos colleges. You're likely familiar with one of our campuses right here in San Ramon. It is a joint venture partnership with Contra Costa Community College District, the county libraries, and the city of San Ramon. During my 7 years on the board of the college district, its fiscal situation has significantly improved, and we've grown the general fund from less than 5% to 23%, improved employee morale and productivity. As your supervisor, I'll support job growth and work to create a diverse employment base. I believe that in addition to a good job, a high quality of life means a healthy, sustainable environment. Most people have chosen to live within the shadow of Mount Diablo because we value its semi-rural feel and open space. We actively use our parks and recreation for trails and exercise. I value our community's clean air, water, and open space, and strongly support the voter-approved urban limit line, urban growth boundary, as you call it in San Ramon, and oppose new urban development outside these boundaries. I also oppose efforts to extend urban services beyond the urban limit line that will promote more growth and sprawl.
That's your only time you get to go over. You're done.
I'll be under on my closing.
Oh, okay, there we go. I'll make up for it. neighborhood. So, all right, well, great. Well, thank you so much for your opening statements. And we're going to start, with our questions. And I suppose it makes some sense to start with the number one question that most of you expect will be answered here. So we might as well to jump right into it. The county, as many of you know, is conducting a general plan study of a proposal from a landowner in the Tassajara Valley called New Farm. It would cluster housing in exchange for creating agricultural areas for olives, fruit trees, and row crops. Proponents say that this is a creative way to provide housing, protect open space, and encourage viable agricultural operations. But the critics, of which many are in this room, note that most of the property is outside the urban limit line and equate the farming component to putting, quote, lipstick on a pig. And I think I am quoting someone in this room. What is your position on New Farm? Would you support or oppose the concept? And we'll start with you, Ms. Anderson, and we'll roll through.
New Farm is something that I have consistently opposed. Now, that being said, as we all acknowledge, I have to look at something with a fair mind. I have to have a fair hearing when it comes before me. However, if it were to come before me today, as it's currently proposed, I would not vote for it. It does not belong outside the urban growth boundary. It's voter imposed. We need to respect the urban growth boundary.
Mr. White.
I agree with Candace, and that makes me think a little bit about something. There's something in Moraga called Sanders Ranch, and I knew the Sanders, they're old-time Moraga people, and they're not allowed at Sanders Ranch anymore. It's not a ranch at all. It's just a big development, and it has a gate, and it won't even let the Sanders in the Sanders Ranch. And so it's like giving it a nice name like New Farm. That sounds great, but besides the name, it just that maybe they should call it what it is, and pigs won't be allowed with or without lipstick. It's just silly how a lot of these things happen. I think that I'm not totally against growth. I think that growth should be around like urban city centers, which is why I picked to live within footsteps of the Lafayette BART station. And I got a great place right there, and I can go right outside of my house and be in any country in the world, right from my house without touching a car, or actually I don't even have to go on a bus, So it's electricity and muscles the whole way, and a little jet fuel.
Ms. Vanderbroek.
Well, I agree. As New Farm's currently proposed, it is something that I would, in concept, oppose. I think it comes back to the policies behind it, and as I said, I strongly support the voter-approved urban limit line, urban growth boundary, as it's called in San Ramon, oppose the urban development outside these boundaries, and I oppose efforts to extend urban services beyond the urban limit line that will promote more growth and sprawl. So I think that covers both kind of the concepts behind the project and the project as it's currently configured, and who knows what it will look like eventually.
Okay. All right, so Mr. White, we'll start the next question with you. As all of you have made reference to the urban limit line, Contra Costa County voters were among the first residents of the state to adopt an urban limit line in an effort to discourage sprawl development on the suburban fringe. Under what circumstances, if any, would you vote to expand that boundary?
None of them. I'm not going to vote to expand the urban limit line. Right? I draw a line at the line. That's what it's there for. So quote me on it all you want. I'm not going to change the urban limit line under no situation, or else I'm a liar. So I won't do it. So.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderbroek.
It's a voter-approved urban limit line, and I think the only way a change could ever be made is if the voters chose that. The other side to the no growth, and I really believe, given our current economy, our current housing supply, that we don't need to go beyond the urban limit line. We need to look at smart growth and infill in the areas that are already developed. But I think if we look ahead 20 or 30 years, and at some point that supply changes and the voters choose to vote that's a different situation, and I don't want to presuppose the voters. I don't support doing it. I don't think there's a reason for doing it now, but I also want my kids to live here one day, and if somehow there's a supply issue that would really be so dire that we needed to move beyond, we've already done all the infill we can do, all the smart roads, all the transit villages, and there's an inventory need, and the voters want to do that, I don't want to presuppose them.
Ms. Anderson.
And it sounds like we're very consistent this evening. I also would never vote to approve an urban limit line shift by the Board of Supervisors. It is something that the voters would have to make that decision. And my only recommendation would be when we come to a different jobs housing balance than we currently have right now. We do have so much undeveloped land within the urban growth boundary, within our urban limit line that can be developed. We have so many unfinished building projects, subdivisions that need to be completed before we even look outside there. And more importantly, it's if and when the urban growth boundary shifts, the urban limit line shifts in the Tassajara Valley, I do not believe it should be the county that is going to develop it, but it should be the adjacent cities. We look at what happened in Doherty Valley, of the lawsuit that ensued. Danville and San Ramon are governed by the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement. San Ramon now has the county building Doherty Valley, then San Ramon has to annex it. It's not built necessarily at their level of service standards, what they would have wanted. Similarly, Danville had the same situation in East Danville when the county approved Alamo Creek and other subdivisions, that then Danville was stuck mitigating the county's decisions when they did not meet our level of service standards. So if the voters ever vote to shift the urban growth boundary, urban limit line, I would like to see adjacent cities developing the land, not the county.
All right, we want to move that mic down to the end. We're going to have Mike Calisthenics here tonight, unfortunately.
Sean
Keep
gets
me
the
in
brunt
shape.
of it.
We'll be in the middle. So I'm going to ask a question here from the audience. It says, this member is asking, pesticide exposure is linked to cancer, autoimmune disease, asthma, and other chronic illnesses. Comparing annual reports of Contra Costa, Santa Clara counties, our county applies 700% more pesticides than Santa Clara, which is 3 times larger. Are you in favor of changing the current policy into a law or ordinance? And if so, what steps would you take to bring this about?
Yes, I have had the opportunity to meet with Citizens for a Safe Environment who are very concerned about the toxics that we're spraying, whether that's the pesticides or weed killers. And they brought up an ordinance that would require pesticides management plan. Effectively argued that it's cost effective given the very high cost of the pesticides and the other toxics that we buy, that we can have a non-toxic or a non-toxic approach and alternative to some of the things we're spraying with at the county. So I would definitely look into that. I would want to understand better what the cost-benefit analysis is, but from what I'm understanding, there really is a good offset both for the environment and financially.
Ms. Anderson?
Danville already does incorporate an integrated pest management program, and it's something that I think should be used countywide. And I think as Tommy pointed out, you always have to ensure that the less lethal means of taking care of these problems work, but you also have to figure the cost-benefit analysis. But when you look at the health and safety of our community, even if you have to pay slightly more to ensure that we're using safe products that help our families, that don't trickle into the groundwater, then it is worth spending those few extra dollars. It's something that, much to the chagrin of my family, I use soap and water to get rid of ants rather than ant spray. And it seems to work just as effectively for me, and it's something, again, where we look to what are we doing in our own lives, how are we using the less damaging pesticides in our own lives, and let's incorporate those same principles into our community. And I think as most communities incorporate and expand their climate action plan, as we have in Danville, as we broaden it into our general plan, it's essential that we do have pest management in such a way incorporated so that we do not harm the environment any more than we have so far.
I think one of the things that's going to happen is 100 years from now, people are going to look back and they're going to laugh at us and they're going to go, look at these crazy people pouring poisons all over their foods. And it's just going to be ridiculous. They're also going to be going, can you believe it? Their roofs didn't even make energy, most of these people. You know, I mean, you know, it's like they were driving around these big, huge pieces of metal with these little explosions and these piston things. And it's like, man, it's like a good thing they invented the wheel, you know. And times are going to change. And right now is when times are changing. And I want to bring that change forward a little bit faster. Before it's too late, you know. I think that it's a good idea to take care of some of these things before the sea level starts flooding places. You know, you know, there's certain things that just need to be done, and are they going to be done now, or are we just going to sit back and not really pay attention to these things and go forward with the way we're living instead of moving forward, creating good green jobs? This is a good high-tech area where there could be a lot of good green jobs. To bring them all into town and start getting people, you know, making the solar panels. I'm a solar energy professor. I teach about solar energy. I travel all over the place teaching about solar energy. I'm also a chiropractor, and so I'm a primary healthcare provider in the state of California. I'm an electrician. I am a solar contractor, so I have a lot of things. Full-time what I am is I'm a solar energy guy right now. But I understand a lot about pesticides. My mom and my stepdad, they have a website called drsaputo.com, and they're on the Contra Costa cable TV channel all the time. drsaputo.com, you can check that out. And if I put pesticides on my food, I get grounded. So I hope everybody here is eating as much organic food as you can, and let's try to speed up the pace at which we change and become more sustainable. Thanks.
Ms. Anderson, we'll start the next question with you. The voting closed on April 6th on Contra Costa County's property owner election for a water fee to pay for stormwater runoff, to pay for increasingly stringent federal and state rules over trash and pollution entering the region's water from urban runoff and stormwater drainage system. It may or may not pass. There was a lot of controversy about it. But in any case, the experts say there won't be enough money. How should the county, if it should, pay for these runoff pollution reductions as required by the feds and the state? And what programs would you support, if any?
Well, they don't have a choice. They need to pay for it, and this is something that we've confronted in Danville. And as we went through the re-permitting process 4 years ago, we did raise concerns. All of us want clean water. We want to ensure that the water flowing into the bay is clean. But some of these requirements are very stringent. They're very, I don't want to necessarily say onerous, but challenging, and they're very expensive. And so most cities are looking to new streams of revenue because the fines are so hefty in order to pay those. There is no question that the county is going to have to implement the policies, the filters that you need to put on drains, perhaps the increased street sweeping, all of the compliance with the permit. Personally, I did not like how the permit process turned out, the voting process, where the Board of Supervisors approved it the same day that it went out to the public as far as a promotional piece by the individual or the company that was handling the PR for this. Danville's Town Council voted on it. I personally opposed Danville voting in favor of it only because, to me, the process violated the rights of the people, and it violated the trust of the people and how the vote went forward to the community. I'm all for clean water. I will continue in Danville to comply with the permit. We're just taking it out of the general fund, and I'm assuming the county is going to have to do the same to comply with that permit or face very, very stiff fines, daily fines from the Clean Water Board as well as potentially from the federal government.
Mr. White.
I hope that water right there is clean that we're drinking, because I'm in support of clean water all the way around. So I'm for it. It costs a little bit of money to have clean water. It's a lot cheaper to drink out of the faucet than it is to help out the plastic industry, and then you recycle these plastic bottles and think you're doing good for the environment. But wouldn't it be nice to just be able to drink the water out of your tap? They say that I can actually taste the water when I'm going to different places, and I know that the water, and it's kind of funny. Like, you think the more urban areas. When I lived in Oakland for a little while, the water was pretty good. San Francisco water, Hetch Hetchy, that's the Yosemite Valley water. And then when you go from somewhere between Walnut Creek and Concord, it's like you got to really be careful. And if you go down to Los Angeles, that water, it's like they better not ever give us that kind of water, because it's like I'm afraid to take a shower in Los Angeles. It'll probably it could hurt your skin down there, some of that water. So anything that we can do to make the water cleaner is just like, it's a good thing for us. It's a good thing to keep our hospitals empty. If we take care of the water and the pesticides, it's gonna make it so less people are going in to get cancer, to get treated for cancer. And that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of things. Is I'm for holistic government. You don't just think what's the cheapest thing right now, but what's the cheapest thing down the road? What's the cheapest thing more than 4 years after your term expires? That kind of stuff is really important. When people are talking about bullet trains and increasing the infrastructure, I'd like to even see BART come down to 680 here. But when people are talking about those kinds of investments, they a lot of times they just get stuck in these little 4-year election cycles. And I think what it's time to do now is to think far in advance and invest in the water for our grandchildren.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderbroek.
Well, I'm just pleased to say that my husband and I sat down and read the ballot measure. We realized it was a ballot, read it, and actually returned it in support of it. I do think the process for bringing that question to the voters was not very well done. And I understand that people may have concerns with it because of the process. But when you do step back and look at the content of what's happening, we need to take responsibility for what we're going to choose to discharge to the bay. We all flush the toilet. We all, have to rinse off our homes and have stuff go down the storm drain. We need to have clean water, and if they're right in their projections, we're gonna have about 1.7 million new people in the Bay Area by 2035, and we have a lot of planning to do, a lot of things we need to do right now in preparation for that. Things like reducing our vehicles miles traveled, improving our jobs housing balance, cleaning up our water, ensuring our water is clean, and preserving our agricultural core. It's more than just a process problem. We had to look to the content, and for many of the municipalities, if they didn't comply, they would be fined. So in reality, we needed to do this despite how messed up the actual process might have been.
All right, Mr. White, we'll start the next question with you. In Senate Bill 375, every local government must adopt a sustainable community strategy in order to receive their share of state and federal transportation funds. The goal of this legislation was to help the state achieve required greenhouse gas emission reductions mandated in AB 32. For the Bay Area, the initiative has been called One Bay Area, which has drawn some controversy about regional control versus local control. Was SB 375 the right move on the state's part, and why or why not? And if you have worked on a sustainable community strategy, please explain your role and your approach. And to add to that, one of the members of the audience on this front is wondering specifically, if you were elected as supervisor, what would you do for a sustainable community strategy? I know that's a mouthful, my apologies.
Okay. Well, I'm all for sustainable communities. That's actually a name that probably more or less represents what it stands for, not something that you find too often in politics. Like I said before, I live near a BART station, And that's kind of a lot about what this is about. It's trying to cut down on all the driving, making it easier to commute, making it easier to get places without going in, driving around that big piece of metal, with throwing a bunch of dinosaurs into your tank and burning them up really fast. There's a lot of things that having sustainable communities, that's a good example of acting locally for a global consideration. You think about, actually where I live, I see all those crosses out on the hill in Lafayette. And I think, what's that really for? That's so we can drive cars, pretty much. And it's also, it's kind of, when you drive a lot, it kind of burns you out a little bit. You don't get as much stuff done. Being a chiropractor, I saw a lot of the healthcare end of the spectrum there, is when we're driving around these big pieces of metal, everybody wants to get a bigger piece. So when the accident happens, they don't get served as the guy in the little car. And it's just this crazy chain reaction that takes off. And there's a lot of people in this room right now, I'm sure, that have permanent neck damage and permanent low back pain and shooting pains and headaches because of the way that our society works. Our society works is we got to go down and keep the oceans open, keep the Strait of Hormuz open, so we can get around in our cars however fast we want to, without we've taken the trains out of business, and it just talk about trickling down. That's where things trickle down, is as it trickles down right to our necks and our low backs and our pocketbooks. And the price of gas, everybody's a hostage to that too. So it's time to make some alternatives.
Ms. Vanderbroek.
What we need to do is reduce vehicle miles traveled and improve our jobs housing balance. I've been very active on economic development organizations trying to attract businesses here. One of the companies that moved here during my activity on East Bay EDA was AAA. We also have PMI moved out from San Francisco. We need to bring the jobs here so that we're not commuting there to San Francisco. And I think much of the focus will be on reducing vehicles miles traveled and improving our jobs housing balance. If we can do, those two things are the key to reducing the greenhouse gases. And the community college board does not have that requirement, but I will offer that we are walking the environmental talk at the community colleges. We are building and operating facilities and educating our students with the environment in mind. Some of the largest solar projects east of the Rockies are parking lot solar programs at the colleges. We have green training and solar installation programs, and we partner with a number of other county organizations to teach and build green. So I think we've been doing our part, and as a supervisor I would continue that and look to how we can use land use to reduce vehicle miles traveled and improve our jobs housing balance.
Ms. Anderson.
And there's some things that I really like about One Bay Area and with sustainable communities. Some of the things I really like about it are that you increase transportation choices for people, that you create neighborhoods that are more walkable, where you aren't as dependent on vehicles, you support more jobs near your housing. I like the idea of having more affordable housing closer to transit, and that each community needs to provide its own fair share of affordable housing. The things that I do have concerns with involve balancing local control over planning decisions. You need to weigh the benefit of controlling planning and your return of transportation dollars to each community being controlled by another body. And so what I'm talking about is balancing the local control. Each city gets return to source transportation dollars that help them improve their roads, help them improve other infrastructure within their community. And in some instances, for example, some of the earlier versions of how we were going to implement sustainable communities, cities were being told you create a project development area, but then you need to spend 70% of your dollars in that project development area. For a community like Danville, where our PDA is less than 5% of the entire town, being told that we would need to spend 70% of our dollars in that 5% of the town wasn't workable. And this was something that we articulated both to ABAC and to MTC as well. We need to also acknowledge that some of the projections that are being brought forward may not truly reflect, they may be a little aggressive of what's going to actually happen with jobs creation. We need to look at the suburban-urban balance, where we will be seeing, I think as Tommy mentioned, more companies wanting to bring their businesses closer to suburban areas. And so it's reaching that very fine balance to achieve the sustainability while at the same time allowing cities to make their own planning decisions.
All right, Ms. Vanderbroek, we'll start the next question with you. And this is a question from the audience. It is, what is your position on Sid Corey's proposed 200-acre cemetery in Tassajara Valley?
Do you still have that in? Is it actually filed in the county?
I confess, I just heard about it tonight myself, that it had been revived, so I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to walk Tassajara Ridge recently, and we looked down on that property and looked at it, and I'm not really certain that the cemetery is a good use of that particular open space. I think we need to look really hard at what impacts it could have, what type of review it should go through. But I respect and appreciate that we do have a shortage of cemeteries. That's a fact that I didn't know when I walked Tassajara Ridge. There is that reality. So we do need to find appropriate places to have whether it's our places of worship or our cemeteries. But my observation from the ridge line is I'm not sure that's the right place. I'd have to see how he would lay it out on the property and what it would do to ridge lines, how much soil would need to be moved. You know, it doesn't sound like a good idea, but I haven't actually seen the right project,
Ms.
the actual
Anderson.
project.
Ms. Anderson.
And I have a little bit of a differing view. Over the years, I have heard this proposal come forward, and I think it's actually can be, if it's done correctly, an excellent way to maintain open space, to avoid development in the Tassajara Valley. Again, you would have to look at where would the water come, what kind of landscaping would you have. Clearly in the Tassajara Valley, there is not water to sustain a green, grassy, golf course looking cemetery, and certainly I wouldn't be supportive of large mausoleums or chapels popping up out there. But to me, if you had some beautiful rolling natural hills as a final resting place for someone, I think it would be a lovely addition to our Tassajara Valley, and I think it's certainly keeping within the spirit of maintaining that in open space, and certainly it's to me a lot better than putting the same number of houses out there.
Mr. White.
I think a question like this too would have to be run by the people that live next door to it. But I have lived, not too far from the cemetery. It's not that bad of a thing. There's something that I've done a little bit of reading about, and they're called green burials, where they take people and they bury them without embalming fluids, without the big fancy, get ripped off by the burial people caskets and all that kind of stuff. They stick them into the ground with maybe a wood box or even something less than that. Put them nice and deep. Maybe plant an oak tree. There's other ways of looking at things. In fact, personally, I've thought about this before when people don't like to think about when they die someday. But personally, I don't want to have a bunch of toxic chemicals shot into me, and when it's my time to go. There's certain people, even their religious beliefs don't allow them to get embalming fluid into them, and so and I don't think I don't want to fill up the Tassajara Valley with embalming fluid either. That's not good for all the species and everything that we're talking about. Also, it's formaldehyde. It's known by the state of California to cause cancer. I think that there could be some kind of utopian you know, green burial place. And I'm not saying that's where it has to be, but it's probably a good idea worth looking into. Probably something that people would like, something that somebody like I would like, you know, to get, you know, to have a green burial, to go out of this world actually doing something for the world, putting a little bit of fertilizer into the ground for my organic food eating body, and you know, it's like becoming part of the earth, back to the earth, instead of, you know, pumping fluids out, pumping fluids in, and just becoming part of the problem.
Alrighty, we'll move on to a little more food to water. Let's start with you, Ms. Anderson. Contra Costa County has been a key voice in Bay Area water discussions for decades. In the latest round of solutions offered by the state as a means to balance the needs of people with the needs of the environment from the Sacramento River Delta, state's looking at a peripheral pipeline around the Sacramento River for delivery to the State Water Project. I believe it's no longer a 18 freeway lane canal, but a pipe. So what's your position? Would you support the construction of this pipeline, and why or why not?
No, I would not support the construction of a pipeline. I don't want to see water diverted around the Delta. I've been very impressed with what's been going on with the Delta Conservancy and how important it is as we move forward to look at how can we preserve our waterways, how do you reach that equitable balance of water being needed by farmers and those downstream, with the importance of maintaining a very nice ecosystem that we do have that has already been degenerated over time because of some of these water wars. And I recognize the South State is losing a lot of their water. They're not getting as much as they want from the Colorado River. They're having an influx of population. But please don't take our water from the Delta and ship it down to Southern California. We need to preserve our own Delta area. And again, I know Mary, I got an email from Mary Pifo today announcing how she had been very successful back in Washington doing a lot more lobbying on this very issue, and it's something where I see great collaboration among several agencies to preserve the Delta, to enhance the Delta, and I would like to see that us move in that direction rather than a peripheral canal diverting our water.
Mr. White.
The answer to any question like this is we need extreme conservation. Candace just said the word water war, and she meant something different than what I'm going to talk about when I talk about a water war. Decades from now, we're not going to be fighting over oil as much as we're probably going to be fighting over water. Water is the scarce resource that this planet is going to have. We just had a dry year. It happens to be raining right now, but what if that happens for the next 10 years? What if it just stays dry like that and population keeps on growing? Something big is going to happen. With water, there's already different countries in this world where the people upstream are drying out the people downstream. There's barely any water that goes into the Gulf of down there, the Gulf of California down there, where the Colorado River dumps, and Sea of Cortez, and so we got to really start thinking about water. And so yeah, I don't think putting a pipeline and dumping the Delta and making the fish dry up and all that and leaving the pesticides backflowing up the Delta is a good idea. I think we need more water in the Delta, not less. I think we need to do some, lots of conservation, learn how to use renewable energy to pull the fresh water out of the ocean, which definitely can be done. And there's just a lot of different things that we need to be working on as citizens of this world to take care of the problems that are going to be facing our children and our grandchildren. And one of those big issues is going to be water. Once water dries up, what's going to happen to our food supply? And if we don't have the grains, how are we going to have the meat? Being a vegetarian helps, but there's also other things that we can do to preserve water.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderbroek.
Thank you. I don't support a peripheral canal or pipeline or ditch or whatever it is they want to call it around the Delta, and that's very important. I think something else that's very important in this issue is our delta levees. And our delta levees are very fragile, whether that's to earthquake or animal or other invasive type problems. The delta levees are critical. And for those of you who do, probably not many here, but get water from Contra Costa Water District and points north and east, one levee going down can make the difference between whether you get your water delivered or not. It's very, we have a number of intake points along the delta. So I would add to the concern about building something to take water around the delta, I would also call to your attention how important it is that we address our aging and fragile levees, and we ensure that we can maintain the services that go through those levees in case of earthquake or whatever other natural disaster happens. So I want to make sure I call to your attention the levee situation as well.
All right, so Mr. White, we'll start the next question with you. This is a question from the audience. Many jobs in this county rely on the oil refineries. How would you, if elected, prepare the local economy and workforce for a post-peak oil economy?
That would be a great problem for me to have. I guess everybody here probably knows about the concept of peak oil, and it looks like we've hit peak oil. And what I'm doing right now for that is I'm training as many people as I can on how to implement solar energy. So solar photovoltaics is my specialty. I think that one way that I like to look at it is if every person in the world just spent a week, switching everything over to renewable energy, a week or two, we'd totally be off fossil fuels. I mean that, but instead we're too busy. So we got to keep burning stuff. And how long are we going to be able to burn stuff? And there's a lot of people too that are climate skeptics and all that, but everything is a continuum. So if we look at, okay, let's just say maybe some people are right or maybe somebody else is right. Even if there's a 10% chance that the scientists are right about global warming, that's a 10% chance that that's going to be like the end of the world as we know it. Are we willing to take that chance? It's time to do something. So as far as mitigating the problems out over there in the refineries, that's going to take generations to clean up that mess. It's like I would be very afraid to see what's underneath the soil in those places. When they go bankrupt, or if they go bankrupt, they are making record profits right now. Are they going to be able to afford to clean up the mess that they have over there after peak oil? Assuming that happens, it's probably not going to happen right away. But at some point, we've used up enough energy. At some point, somebody's going to have to try to clean that up. And I don't even like breathing over there. So who's going to go over there and dig things up, plant new species, get the organisms to eat the toxins and all that? It's going to take a long time. One thing that I like to ask people too about like nuclear power plants is like, if you bury spent nuclear fuel, how long does it take before it's safe?
Mr. White, thank you.
Right.
Ms. Vanderbroek.
Yeah, I guess I have to preface my answer to this question with I think Contra Costa County has been blessed with a very healthy manufacturing base, and that base has provided for many jobs, high income, living wage jobs to folks who may not have a four-year degree. We have PTEC program, which is the Petroleum Technical Education program at Los Medanos. They're training operators to run those facilities. So I think while I believe that we will be evolving away from our manufacturing base in the current form that it's in, it has provided a great deal of employment here in the county. But that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be now diversifying and moving into a clean technology economy. We should be moving that way. We are moving that way. Active in the Contra Costa Council and seeing how we can attract and bring more clean energy companies to Contra Costa, again, to bring the jobs here, but to diversify our base. If we don't diversify the base now, when those older jobs, the older job providers are evolving out, we won't have anything. And they have provided a good base that we need to make sure that we replace. And that requires a lot of work right now, attracting additional, whether it be solar or other clean energy type jobs to this county. It's important we do it.
Ms. Anderson.
And I don't think in my lifetime we'll see the disappearance of the refineries, and I think over the last few years they have been good neighbors to the county, and with the county's regulation of our refineries, we have ensured far fewer of the health crises we saw many years ago, and for that I'm grateful. I look at the new technology that is available. I've mentioned iGate just briefly previously. This is something Danville has been involved in. It's essentially where you are opening up our labs, the Lawrence Livermore Lab, the Sandia National Lab, and their technology, and making that available to businesses, to clean energy businesses, to startup businesses that can utilize either a lab scientist, their computers, or some technology. Now that Richmond has also been awarded, so to speak, another one of our national labs going there, there's some amazing opportunities that we are going to have in this county to help new businesses move forward. Not only do we want to bring the businesses here to start up, but we also want to make sure that we train our workforce. And I've been seeing that working with the Tri-Valley cities, how Dublin is their key element of iGate, is working with their local community college in partnership with some of these new businesses to ensure that we're creating a trained workforce. We can bring it into our high schools as well. Again, as we do away with our auto shop, we need to be training our students who may not go on to a four-year college to be prepared to help with these new technologies so that we are not outsourcing them overseas, and more importantly, not even outsourcing them without the state. If we do these very basic things, is we help businesses start up, is we employ programs such as we have in Danville with our Business Concierge program, we can help existing businesses grow and help new businesses start.
Ms. Vanderbroek, next question starts with you. Farming and ranching remains a beloved feature in our California landscape, but it is often difficult to make a living, especially for family-owned, smaller operations near urban areas. Landowners who say they can't make ends meet on the farm often chafe at zoning rules that restrict their ability to subdivide and sell their properties for more lucrative housing. What programs would you promote as a means to preserve agriculture in this county, including this idea of whether or not landowners should be able to subdivide into smaller parcels, to preserve agriculture in this county, in addition to making it a viable economic enterprise?
This is something that I spent a lot of time with the 3 years that I was at Supervisor Pico's office, because the Ag Corps was in her district. And it took me back to childhood, that you could get cherries, all the corn, now actually some fairly good wineries popping up. We have an incredible asset in our Ag Corps in Contra Costa County. And the first step was defining the Ag Corps, and we have done that. We know what is the richest area that we need to preserve. What I will say is that there are individual properties within that large swath that's called Ag Corps that the general plan needs to be a little more broad on. For example, we had a property owner who could not cultivate on their property. They were next to a school. They couldn't have the pesticides, etc. They wanted to do writing lessons in a preschool on their property. I thought that was an appropriate use, but because it was in the Ag Corps, the answer was no. So I think what we need to do is look at that big swath called the Ag Corps and understand that there are occasionally some individual parcels that may not be the richest of soil, and what can we do that's complementary to farming and ranching within that, so that we can have folks who may not be able to make a living because their patch isn't healthy soil. Maybe they can do something that brings folks to the U-Pickets and the corn programs. Did you already pull the last one out? No. Oh, anyway, so there was a program proposed that looked at, how can we make better use of the products that are produced in the Ag Corps? How can we have potentially some visitors and convention type, not convention bureau, but visitors programs that will attract people and get more tourism through there to make it more sustainable.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Agritourism is something that we've been doing in the Tri-Valley, and Danville and San Ramon, we're sort of on the edge because we're on the edge of Contra Costa, but we also work closely with the Tri-Valley cities, and so with the Tri-Valley cities meaning, of course, Livermore, Dublin, and Pleasanton, and that's something we've been looking at because, as most of you know, Livermore has amazing wineries, and they've been able to retain their agriculture by working on an area that their soil is perfect for, and in this case it happens to be wineries. We're also finding some areas are very conducive to olives and to the olive oil industry as well. And so where we can maximize agritourism in an appropriate way, that's a great way to help smaller farms, smaller ranches continue in that respect. We need to also always, you do need to, of course, balance someone's property rights versus the good of the community. And certainly building outside an urban limit line, as we've discussed earlier, is not an appropriate use, but there may be instances where a minor, small subdivision would be appropriate for a landowner if it fit within the zoning, if it fit within the standards of the urban growth boundary in which it sat. I think there are opportunities through marketing, just as we help small businesses, through consolidating farmers, ranchers, their products at local farmers markets, through more regional marketing of their products as well. And those are things that we can continue to do from a county level, from a community level, to help our farmers retain their businesses, to make them successful and pass them on to future generations.
Mr. White.
I grew up on a homestead in Contra Costa County, District 2, the supervisorial District 2 in Contra Costa County. And it's zoned for agricultural land right now. And that's why it's still the Greenbelt. Because if it wasn't agricultural land right now, my uncles would have sold it a long time ago and be doing the money dance. But instead, it's a nice place where my mom goes out and rides her horses. And even though it's agricultural land, doesn't mean that you can't have a little house on there with an organic garden and a couple of horses and some fruit trees, and so that's kind of what I would visualize as being a goal for maybe using some of these lands is maybe there could be a house once in a while that's I mean there can already on agricultural property, and it's something like that, something like where I grew up. Living in the Greenbelt, proud of it, supporting it, and protecting it. And, lots of oak trees and redwood trees, and neighbors over the hill. And even though they live far away, maybe a quarter-mile away, they're still your neighbor, a lot more so than living in the city when you don't even know the guy next door. It's a nice way to live, and I would recommend it to anybody. If they were ever fortunate enough to have the chance to live in the Contra Costa County Greenbelt like I did, just being one of the last hill tribes in the left in the world. It's a great thing, and to just it's like as far as like let me just quickly go over to like farming, and because this is an agricultural question, what's happening is the agribusiness is just ruining farming, and and so unless you're Monsanto and you have Monsanto bred genetically mutated soybeans and corn, then you can't even play the game, and their genetic mutations are going through the air and pollen, and then they're contaminating everything else, and it would be. My dream is to, get back to more healthy foods and healthy farming and people growing their own stuff.
Thank you. You're cheering me up so much. I'm just so. Sorry.
So Ms. Anderson, I believe it's your turn to start. I'm losing track of the place between genetic mutations. So I'm learning a lot today. Ms. Anderson, we'll start this question with you. The term smart growth has given way in many places to sustainable growth, but the concept remains the same. If you build a broad range of housing and shops near transit, people will drive less, congestion will ease, air quality will improve, and will save more open space and agricultural land. But some view this as an assault on an individual's choice to live in a single-family house, which they say reduces their opportunities to find affordable housing in less urbanized areas. Is smart growth smart, or is it, as the critics say, a war on suburbia? And why or why not?
Okay, well, and I addressed this a little bit as I was talking about One Bay Area sustainable communities. And smart growth to me is exactly as it says. It's smart, but it's optional. You don't have to implement it in your cities, and that's where I think we need to make that distinction. In urban areas, it makes so much sense to ensure that we have most of the housing around significant public transportation, that we have walkable communities where people don't need cars when they can access their jobs either on foot or by rail or some other means where they don't need to jump in a car every time they want to go somewhere. But as I was talking about earlier, you do need to balance that with those who choose to live in a more suburban area. And I think each community, as we create our general plans, we balance that and we determine where are we going to have some core areas where maybe we'll see some higher density. And that's something that we identify through the general plan is we get certain numbers from the state, from ABAC, as to where our higher density housing should be. And we always try to put it closer to transit corridors, closer to the freeway. In Danville's case, where we have a very limited public transportation with our county connection bus coming every 45 minutes or so, we want to have it closer to our park and ride, where we have some very innovative companies sending buses up daily. But smart growth brings about some great concepts, and as I talked about, I love the idea of, even in suburban areas, creating much more walkable communities. I love the idea that we do in Danville of ensuring we have walking trails that connect you. But where it really needs to come down to is there needs to be local control. Voters elect their city council to make those land use decisions, and that's where we need to have the balance with all of this. You can't take away that decision-making power from the cities, and if you tie it too closely to transportation dollars, you're effectively doing that, and that's where we have to draw the line.
Mr. White.
I was a biology major in college, and human beings are not exempt from the laws of ecology. The population of human beings is increasing at a rapid pace. There's only so much room. Suburbia cannot stretch on forever. It uses a lot of gas. Gas is getting more and more scarce. Gas is getting more and more expensive. Next week I'm going to be in Alberta, Canada, where it takes a whole lot of energy to pull gas out of the ground. It's not just, you don't just dig a hole now and the stuff comes squirting out. You have to work hard. You have to go down deep into the ocean. And that is the kind of, those were the kinds of things that supported life in the 50s, was the easy to get gasoline that was letting people, ship the Colorado River down to Los Angeles and make the American dream as like a house with 3.2 kids and a dog and a cat, and that it can't go on forever. It was nice when it happened, but we need to be realistic. And there is still, there's still the houses that are there, and if people want it bad enough, they can live in the houses that are already there in suburbia. But the new houses are not going to be able to blanket the Tassajara Valley. We're not going to have condos on the top of Mount Diablo, even however great the view would be, because it would ruin the view for everybody else. But if you look at the carbon footprint of a city in the United States, the best carbon footprint is New York City. And a lot of people spend a lot of money going to New York City because it's a fun place to be. I'm not saying we're going to bring Manhattan into Contra Costa County, but we have to just be realistic and understand that we can't go on sprawling out forever. Suburbia, it was an American dream for a while, but times change, and people are going to have to live closer together. I live in a building with an elevator right now, right by a BART station, and it's not that bad. You know, you don't have to cut the lawn, you don't have to, it saves time.
Thank you. Ms. Vanderbrook?
Yeah, I don't think smart growth should be reserved for just the urban areas. I think we out here in the suburbs need to realize that if we don't want sprawl, we're going to have to have some greater density within our suburban areas. I was somewhat disappointed when Orinda had a property that was adjacent to the BART station, that we couldn't get a little higher density there. Whenever we are adjacent to BART or adjacent to a transportation corridor of any kind, we need to be thinking about a little higher density. And it doesn't have to be kind of the old vision of people thinking terrible gray apartments. I like what Walnut Creek has done. I look forward to probably at one time in my retirement living in downtown Walnut Creek and being able to walk to dinner and have a lot of services right there around me. And to some degree, I think having this broad housing stock is important. It is somewhat generational. When you're young and in college, density is fine. You know, that works for them. Perhaps newly married, it still works. There are a lot of people, and I was one of them, that was called out to a little more suburban feel when I had children. But I just as easily see me in the few years when my second son is off, going back into another situation and letting my suburban home go to somebody else that's coming to raise their kids. So I think it is about a broad housing stock and having it. It is lifestyle and generational. It shouldn't be limited to urban areas. We need to think creatively right here in our great suburbia on how we can do it and how we can do it right.
Mr. White, Ms. Vandenberg gave us a good segue into my next question about infill development. And infill development is billed as a way to reduce suburban sprawl, of course, but unhappy neighbors to higher density, as Ms. Vandenberg referred to, often don't want those projects next door. There are several unincorporated areas in the county near major transit networks, such as the Bay Point New BART, for which the county supervisor would have some role in deciding what types of densities would be approved there. If you were elected, how would you balance the legitimate concerns of immediate neighbors with the larger regional benefits that could include reduced congestions and the provision of housing closer to transit?
Well, some people just, not in my backyard, right? So I think I wouldn't be too popular against those people that are next to a BART station. A BART station is just a great place to do infill development, bring the height of the buildings up in those areas, make them more dense. It's great living in like Tommy was saying, where you can just like walk out. I have a choice of all kinds of restaurants. I don't have to get in my car. I can go to 3 different grocery stores, or 4 different grocery stores actually. Right from where I live. I might start counting more grocery stores as we're talking. There's all kinds of things that I have access to, and it's great. There's a building that they're talking about building right next to my building, and of course people in my building are like, I don't want that building next to my new building. And I'm thinking, I hope it does come there, because it's going to bring in more business for all the businesses there, and then there's going to be even more grocery stores that I could choose my organic salary from. It's just the way of the future, and we're going to have to deal with that. I think that filling up just kind of an idea that I personally have is like within a certain radius of a BART station is a place where you can bring the height of the buildings up, get more dense. Another thing I was thinking too is if you look at Berkeley, Berkeley's, I'm not sure if it's about the 4th densest city in the United States. It's a pretty dense place, and look at that. There's a lot of single-family homes there. Berkeley isn't a bunch of skyscrapers, and it's a pretty dense place. So people aren't going to have to give up their way of life for more density, but I do definitely think that if you're near a BART station, you should accept more neighbors.
and look at it as a good thing, because more neighbors means more friends. More neighbors means more people to sign up for the Sierra Club. And by the way, I'm a card-carrying member of the Sierra Club, so I carry this around. I just wanted to show you guys.
Ms. Vanderbrook, I know you talked a little bit about this, but maybe I'm sure you have more to say. You're running for public office after all.
On density?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. I was trying to make a joke and it didn't.
Well, I worked with one of the housing coalitions when I was with California Alliance for Jobs, and we, our program was a labor management partner, infrastructure builders, and we really were looking at how do we successfully bring higher density, well done housing to the inner areas. It's just a reality that we can't have it both ways. We can't say no to sprawl and no to infill. I, amazingly enough, have had 2 houses built on either side of me in Orinda. One I supported, one I wasn't as happy with, but it was infill. And they're some of the most brutal fights in local government are over infill projects. And there is a balance between private property rights and not imposing an impact on a neighbor. But I think the reality is if we're going to grow by 1.7 million people in the Bay Area between now and 2035, we need to figure out how to do it well. And that doesn't necessarily mean outside the urban limit line. And we're going to all have to find out ways to do it well that makes sense. And one of the comments I did like is it's a way to support your local merchants. When you can put some additional density in your downtown area, you will have a greater variety and flavor of local merchants. And I think it's very important.
Ms. Anderson.
Infill development is an important part of every community, and certainly even in Danville, where we are built out, we are looking at infill development, but it's very different than what you would put at a BART station. And so you need to balance, again, the nature of the community, and you need to balance it with what sort of public transportation, other services you would have available. When we do infill development in a more suburban area like Danville, we're often doing a higher density brought down to the valley floor so we can keep open space, and it works very well, and it's nice to keep the concentric growth in that respect. When we also look at infill development in Danville, as we look at higher density, we are bringing it into our downtown, where we're building units above stores, above retail, and it is a nice way to invigorate the economy. Certainly, when you look at someplace like Bay Point, someplace adjacent to a BART station, it does make sense to intensify the density, to provide the additional number of units that you need for individuals to get to jobs. But again, you always want to look at, is that where the jobs are going to end up, or are we just creating housing and requiring people to hop onto public transportation, or do we have more opportunities to create more jobs closer to housing? And I think where we are right now in San Ramon is a very good example of that, where we have Bishop Ranch right outside our back door, where we have seen it become an amazingly large job center for the Bay Area, where we have major employers here with AT&T, Chevron, now GE, coming to where the housing already exists. So whether you would need to convert this to high-density housing, I don't think so, although I know San Ramon, as part of their general plan, is looking at some more higher-density housing when they create their downtown. Again, infill, very appropriate for the location.
Ms. Vanderbroek, I'll start the next question with you. Those of us in the East Bay are lucky to have many, many parks that we enjoy. Of course, state budget cuts are threatening some of those recreation areas with closure. As a county supervisor, should the county help keep open, as a supervisor, should the county help keep open parks it may not own, and why or why not?
I think when the county's revenues were growing at 7% per year, which they were up until several years ago, we had really wonderful opportunities to reach beyond public safety police, fire, infrastructure, some of the core services that government provides. We had more opportunities when that was the situation. I don't think that is something that the county budget can accommodate today. Can we work in partnership with the state parks? Can we work in partnership with the organizations here to find ways to pave streets, or there's the bike ride up Mount Diablo, Devil Ride? Well, Amgen's coming too. So I think there are ways we must work together. And what I would offer is we need to refocus right now on regrowing our economy, bringing jobs here, and ensuring that that spiral of the economy is going up and not down, so that we can regain those revenues that were coming in and do more to partner with education and partner with parks and partner with other very valuable organizations that may not be the county's highest priority, or really not in their purview. I would offer, though, that I moved to Los Angeles for a couple of years with my husband in a career move. And when I returned, the thing that struck me the most about Contra Costa County in the Bay Area was the East Bay Park system. Living down there, they build on the ridge lines, and they don't have that type of system. Their parks are a basketball hoop and a bunch of grass around it. And when we returned here, and I went back to Tilden and into Briones with my son for Boy Scouts, or into the areas, it just made me realize how fortunate we were to have East Bay Parks, the state parks, and some of these wonderful nonprofit organizations that are preserving our land.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
I don't think that the county will be in a position to run state parks anytime soon. I think even as we start to see revenue increasing, there are going to be so many important needs that need to be met that currently are not. We have a looming unfunded pension liability of over $1.2 billion that's going to need to be addressed. We have county employees who have not received raises for several years. We have needs that are going to need to be met with our social services, with our county health system. So parks is not going to be a #1 priority, especially when it's a state-run park. I think we do have excellent partnerships with East Bay Regional Parks, and they do a great job of keeping so many of their parks very low maintenance. I think there's a lot we can do in the community with volunteers, and it's something. When I served on the Morgan Hill City Council in the early 90s, we had some wonderful parks but no way to maintain them. And I used to do Spruce Up the Park days with the community, where I would choose a park in Morgan Hill and I would get 40 to 50 volunteers to show up at that city park. I would get one parks worker, and we would have our tree trimmers, we would have our pruners, we would have people planting, weeding, and you have an amazing volunteer force in Contra Costa County as we see the baby boomers, and I just squeak into the baby boomer generation, retiring at record numbers. We have people ready to volunteer, and I see that as a much greater answer to helping maintain our state parks than relying on the county to somehow pick up the tab.
Mr. White.
There was a guy named Guthrie that wrote a song called "This Land Is Your Land," and there were some verses in there that got lost a little bit. And what they were about is somebody put a no trespassing sign up. And I don't think we should have no trespassing signs up on public spaces or open spaces. I think we should be able to go and walk right across those lands. If the county doesn't have enough money to go pave the parks or cut the trees on the parks, well, let's go there anyway. It's supposed to be wild, open space. When I go out to the wild, I want to see the wild. And the only thing I'm worried about is getting Lyme disease, which a lot of my friends have contracted already, which that's a public health issue. So we need to work on that too. But I just think that you know, no trespassing signs. Leave the open spaces open. I think we need to raise more money to acquire even more open space. And some of the ways that we can raise some of that money or when somebody wants to develop something and it's big and controversial, they can donate a whole bunch of money to all your groups, and so we could save some more of that land. They call it mitigation. I don't think mitigation's a great thing because it's sort of like selling out. But hey, if we got to do it, we got to do it. And if it's going to make give us more open space that we can not trespass on because we're supposed to be there, then let it be. Let's go out there. Let's enjoy the open space. Some of my favorite places to be are wild places where there's no paths, no roads, and you just got to bushwhack to get there. And when you get there, it's you see the sunset. You know, it's like there's nothing better than that. That's kind of like where I grew up. Thanks.
Well, we're down to time for our last question before we go into closing statements. And I'm going to go bigger and broader. We've done a lot of specifics here. We've focused this evening on environmental issues, but as we've seen, this term means different things to different people. What is your definition of an environmental issue? And under your definition, what's the top environmental priority you would have if you were elected? And we'll start with you, Ms. Anderson.
I see an environmental issue as being anything that really touches our quality of life. And so to me, the #1 quality of life issue, particularly in District 2, is something like the Tassajara Valley and ensuring that we protect the urban growth boundary, that we ensure that remain protected until the voters decide that we are going to move the urban limit line, and even then, not having the county be the one who is going to someday, if it ever gets developed, develop the Tassajara Valley, but allow the adjacent cities to be the ones who make that determination, because they are the ones, those citizens are the ones who will most be affected by it. With regard to secondary environmental issues, it's certainly to me, and probably the more intriguing one, is how we continue to reduce our diversion rate. And sitting on the Central Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority, it is very heartening to me to see how we are increasing the diversion rate, meaning we're diverting things out of the landfills and instead we're recycling. 2 years ago, we made sure that all of our cities within the Solid Waste Authority had construction demolition ordinances in place so that we ensure that everything that, when anything's being built, gets recycled appropriately. We created the very fabulous food waste program where the food scraps are taken from kitchens and schools, taken over to East Bay Mud's facility, and ground up. The methane gas is used to run the plant, and the byproduct then is used for agriculture. We implemented programs where we're getting rid of the sharps. We're capturing the sharps from the needles from people that they use. Prescription drugs. We're recycling, taking away the batteries. These are all programs that are keeping very dangerous items out of our landfill, and to me are very significant. And it's a very fun project to work on to continue to find ways to divert solid waste.
Mr. White.
My favorite environmental issue, that's almost an impossible question, but I want to lead that into the root of all evil, and it actually has to do with all issues, and it has to do with the way that we finance our campaigns in the United States. And the way that we finance our campaigns, the way that people get elected, is we cut down a whole bunch of trees, we turn it into junk mail, we get a bunch of developers and refineries and to pay to have those go to everybody's mailbox. And then everybody gets those things in their mailbox, and for some reason, people tend to believe that. Well, I'm just saying right now, it's time to start thinking a little bit more. I'm not passing out any paper in this campaign. I'm not taking any contributions in this campaign. This is a 100% green campaign, and my main issue this campaign is to not accept any campaign contributions and to expose what happens when somebody gives somebody money. When somebody gives somebody money, they're doing it for a reason. They're doing it for political access. People don't go out giving money most of the time. I mean, there's small amounts of money that people give out for, just to be good. But most of these bigger multi-thousand dollar, above that donations are for people that want to be the ones that are on top of the list when they want their development to be made. When somebody wants to do a development, they're like, hey, good thing I donated to the winning person. A lot of times they give money to the winner and the loser just to hedge their bets. You know? And it's crazy and it's ridiculous, and everybody knows that the system is not right. We see the big Supreme Court Citizen United decision, super PACs, all this stuff going on all over the place, and it's just this crazy raising money game that politics is. And I'm sure that it's wearing the people out next to me a little bit more than I am, because I don't have to go raising any money. But and I don't blame them for doing it, because that's just the way the world is. But I think that's what sets me apart and makes me different. And that's my #1 environmental issue. And every issue, it's to root out the root of all evil, and that is to take money out of politics.
Ms. Vanderbroek.
Well, I wish you would have done it before this campaign. Lisa, I think your original question is, what is the definition of being in...
What is your definition of an environmental issue, and what would based on your definition, what would your top priority be if you were elected?
Right, I think my definition of an environmental issue or being an environmentally conscious person is to want to leave our planet a little better off than when we got it. And there's so many ways that we do that, whether that's through learning to use something other than the toxics and the pesticides to knock down the weeds and to protect our agricultural community, whether that's the preservation of the high-value land, such as in the Tassajara Valley. Food scraps program was on my list. I'm glad Candace mentioned it, because it is an excellent program. Alternative energy fleets for the county. There are some of the fleet is alternative energy, but how can we take that to 100%? When we build our facilities, build to be LEED certificate buildings. We're building some of the best sustainable buildings. Increasing use of solar and water recycling. I'm big on water recycling. I believe that when you put side by side desal with water recycling, desal is going to end up just sucking power for many, many years. It's very low in its construction costs relative to water recycling, but the ongoing maintenance of desal is sending money to the energy companies. If we invest in water recycling, that money is going to build water recycling system. It gives us local jobs up front first, and then they're maintained relatively inexpensively, because once they're in, they're run. So those are some of the areas that I think that we can touch and that are important to me. But the reality is, how do we leave our planet? We came in individually to this planet, and how are we going to leave it? What impact are we going to leave when we go, and how can we make it a little bit better?
All right, thank you. Well, we've reached the time for closing statements, and we're going to hear them in the opposite order that we heard opening statements. So that puts Ms. Vanderbroek back on the hot seat. So we'll start with Tommy Vanderbroek. If you want to give us your closing comments.
Yes, I do. Again, I come from this a little broader than just the environmental perspective, because many of you I won't get an opportunity to see again, or and may have broader interest than just what is my perspective on specific environmental issues. So I'm going to offer my business experience, more than 20 years in my career, private sector career, strong entrepreneur, started a small business, grew a small business, met payroll, and so I bring that, having had to meet a budget, having to watch cash flow, and having to make sure we had payroll. I'm bringing that career, my 30-year career, 20 of it in the business community, to this job. I'm a past president of the Contra Costa Council Board of Directors. We have one of its presidents in the audience tonight. I've served on the East Bay Economic Development Association's Executive Committee, John Muir Mount Diablo Community Health Benefit Foundation, Contra Costa Regional Health Foundation, and multiple campaigns that increase funding for local schools, community colleges, and local transportation. I'm a graduate of Leadership Contra Costa, and I was named a champion for children by the Contra Costa Child Care Council. I am the fiscally conservative, socially progressive candidate in this race. I am the only pro-choice, pro-marriage equality woman in the race, and I will work to ensure that women's reproductive health care will be protected at the county hospital through its clinics and its funding of Planned Parenthood. I'm proud to have the endorsement of former Congresswoman Ellen Tauscher, George Miller, Assemblywoman Joe Buchanan, Susan Bonilla, the Women's Campaign Fund, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, and a number of other education leaders in the community, such as Joe Ovick, Tom Torlakson, former Danville Mayor Susanna Schlendorf, and a host of other local community people. For more information, go to www.tommyvdb.com. You can find out more about me and converse with me directly.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sean White.
And I'm the only pro-choice marriage equality man in the room. Yeah. So let's get back to a little bit about my credentials, or where I'm coming from. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm a solar energy. I teach at Diablo Valley College. I know you're on the board there, so don't try to take me out that way and get me the principal job.
Worried about retribution?
Yeah, I'll try to be nice. And so I teach at Diablo Valley College. I teach at Solar Universe in Livermore. I live over in Lafayette. I teach and I spend a lot of time traveling. Next week I'm going to be in Alberta, Canada. I spend a lot of time teaching in New Jersey. I've been to China a couple times in the last year, and I've done a few talks there on solar energy. I got to see their maglev trains. I was on a maglev train like a month ago. I was on a bullet train a couple months ago. They're way ahead of us in some of this technology. We got to really work hard at catching up. And that's China. That was a third world country not too long ago. And now you're just riding along with magnetic levitation. Some of the other things is I'm a primary health care provider in the state of California. I was a chiropractor in Orinda for 12 years in an active practice. I'm still a licensed chiropractor, although I don't see too many patients anymore. So I really understand the healthcare issues. I understand about toxins. I understand about holistic healthcare. I ran a company called Holistic Center for a while. I had offices in Rockridge and Orinda. I've seen a lot of the world. I know a lot about how things work. I'm a licensed electrician. I'm a licensed contractor. And I've been accused of being an environmentalist.
Thank you. And Ms. Candace Anderson.
Yes. Since social issues are being brought up, I think it's very important to note that as a mother of 2 daughters, as a woman, as an attorney, I have always been an advocate for women's rights, and I think we need to focus on issues that truly are issues, not ones that either have been decided by the Supreme Court or will be decided by the Supreme Court. We need to focus on issues that really deal with the county. And when you look at county issues, you need to look at who is going to be the leader who brings the experience, who is going to be the person who has a proven track record when it comes to fiscal responsibility, when it comes to issues with regard to the environment. People can make promises, they can make suggestions of what they're going to do, but you need to look at what someone has accomplished in their years on city councils. You look at my community of Danville and you're able to see how we have been able to defend our urban limit line, how we have been able to employ sustainable practices to make our community a unique and a very special place that it is today. I bring fiscal responsibility on a county level as well, based upon the various boards and commissions I serve upon, where I've had to make some very challenging decisions as we deal with pension issues on those boards as well. I have the endorsement of the outgoing supervisor, Gail Olkema, of the entire Danville Town Council, of 4 of the 5 members of the San Ramon City Council, of the Sheriff of Contra Costa, of the District Attorney of Contra Costa, of the Treasurer Tax Collector, because they can count on me to make the decisions that need to be made. In La Morinda, the Mayor of Lafayette, Carol Federici, Mike Anderson. I have the endorsement of the mayors of Moraga, Vice Mayor as well, and council member from Orinda. All of these people trust me to make these hard decisions that I will continue to bring the leadership necessary to take Contra Costa one step further and out of the very difficult time we are in right now.
Let's give
give all these candidates a big round of applause. I know that Matt must have a few final words, and then we'll all be heading home. So thank you again for being here tonight.